Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. And I know last week we had our legal expert, Attorney Pichardo, on location, and today we have Attorney Royce Russell on location. I mean, they are attorneys, so from time to time they're going to be in active duty while this show is happening. So we appreciate you being flexible with us. And I know that I had to do a little multitasking last week as well. But thank you to everyone who tuned in and was engaged in the conversation. Shout out to everyone who catches the replay and shares this. We appreciate you. And just really, it's a wonderful opportunity to share information with two people who do this work every day, and where the legal meets the cultural is critically important in the times that we're living in, to really understand what's happening around us and not just be on the sidewalk listening to chatter, but having some real concrete information on what you can do and what you should know to advocate for your rights. So with that being said, let me turn it over to Senor Pichardo to greet us for the day.
Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Hola, mi gente. ¿Cómo estamos? Encantando este verano bonito y caluroso. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I hope you're enjoying the heat after a cold winter. So welcome to the show today.
Absolutely. I mean, let's just pause and give thanks that we see sunshine and blue skies. And I mean, it felt like forever that winter didn't want to go. Sprinter was here hanging out, but now we're really in the springing season because summer is right here upon us in a couple of days, literally. So we look forward to enjoying a wonderful season and hopefully not too many headlines that take our breath away, as you know, our constant prayers go up for all of those who have been a part of the crisis that we see happening across the country with gun violence. And you know, we're going to get started on today's show with something that is directly related to this conversation and what we're seeing when we talk about advocacy and what is happening in the world. So I'm going to cue this up. Senor Pichardo, sources say if Supreme Court overturns New York gun carry law, new rules could take years to implement. What say you with this headline?
Well, this, this article is basically talking about the gun law as it exists in New York. As a lot of folks are well aware, it is very difficult for you to get a license to own, and even more difficult to get a license to carry in New York. Very, very, we have some of the most restrictive gun laws, and in particular, New York City. Now, what's happening right now is that the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated has basically challenged the gun laws in New York, basically saying that they violate the Second Amendment because, they impose a proper cause requirement for you to carry a weapon, not just to own, but you to carry. And what do I mean by proper cause? Well, normally, like I said, it's very difficult. Normally, the only way you can get a carry permit is if you are able to demonstrate that you have like some fear of having to engage in some level of self-defense with a gun. Let's say you demonstrate that, hey, I'm a jewelry store owner and I carry large amounts of cash or some other valuable items, and I face the high possibility of getting robbed and having to defend myself with a with a firearm, and I don't have any felonies, criminal records, etc. Then and only then will I be able to get a permit. And there are basically two individuals that are suing on behalf of, as part or members of this rifle association, basically saying that they applied for a concealed permit. I believe each of them were granted license to own, but not to carry. And they are arguing that they demonstrated a ordinary person right to carry, and that their ability to carry is being violated by, the city of New York by not being allowed to carry. And, New York State, on the other hand, says, listen, this is necessary because, in terms of safety, in terms of, in terms of New York City in particular being an urban center versus, a rural place, in terms of carrying a weapon would basically cause a disturbance. Now, there's also a twist to this thing, too, because many people believe that even if some parts of the New York gun carry law get invalidated, that they will still be able to keep the law alive by continuing restrictions in certain places, i.e. the subway and, certain interior areas, because that part of it has been upheld in some prior precedent. But, overall, the New York gun law is really in danger right now because there was a similar law overturned in Washington, D.C. not too long ago. And so, this is part and parcel of that continuous journey towards, invalidating gun laws. And it's strange because this is at the same time that you have these huge massacres. Now, there are many twists to this case, because when you look closely at this case, the plaintiffs are actually being supported by the National African American Gun Association, because
really
some African Americans gun owners feel like restrictive gun laws were really historically created to prevent them during Jim Crow from possessing firearms, even though, even like specifically during that era, they had more of a need than at any other time in history to be able to defend themselves against white supremacists, and really needed the right to bear arms. And this is not the first time I've heard this, historical theory behind gun law possession, gun law carry restrictions. So, of course, on the other end of this thing, the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund is backing the defendants. And once these restrictive gun laws upheld, basically because, they feel like they are necessary to protect minority communities against discriminatory hate crimes. Whites carrying guns and murdering Black people, not to mention, the proliferation of guns already, illegal guns that exist in Black communities. So, this is going to be an interesting case to absolutely watch. You've even heard Mayor Adams commenting about this law, and him, fearing the overturning of the annulling of New York's gun laws, and them having to be rewritten, and the rules having to be rewritten in order to fit within whatever Supreme Court decision comes out. That decision is supposed to come out this month. So it's definitely being closely watched, and has very important implications for the future of gun ownership, regulation, public safety, and not to mention racial discrimination. Because that's, like I said, that arguments about that have definitely been brought up in this case, on a number of different levels. So it's something that's definitely, worth watching. It hasn't come out, but it's been slowly making its way. First, just let me explain. As we've explained on this show on previous occasions, you have the trial court, and then you have two layers of appellate courts, right? And this is basically this is going on in the federal system. So this case was first decided by a district judge on the trial level. That district judge says, no, I'm gonna uphold New York's law. It's not in violation of the Second Amendment. Then it went up to what's called the Second Circuit, and that's the circuit that mainly controls here in the state of New York, and they also upheld New York's law, but now it goes to the Supreme Court, right? And right now you have a conservative leaning Supreme Court. So, let's we're going to see what happens. That comes out this month. Like I said, it's closely watched. I'm wondering whether these massacres are going to have some effect on this decision or not. It remains to be seen. It was brought under Section 1983, which is the preeminent, civil rights statute, because these people are saying that their civil rights are being violated in violation of the Second Amendment. Very interesting. Normally,
very interesting.
1983. When it comes to police abuse, when it comes to other racially discriminatory conduct that people of color are arguing about in terms of the violation of their constitutional rights. In this case, it's being used to uphold the right to keep and bear arms. Bear. What does bear mean? Bear is have on your person, right? And these folks are arguing that part that says bear means I get to carry, not just my home, not just keep locked in a box separated from the bullets in the trunk of my car. No, I have a right to carry this thing and defend myself if necessary.
This, it's all concerning what we see happening as trends from state to state. And we've been talking about and watching, like even when Georgia turned to an open carry state. And I don't know what we are doing in this country. There's so many other implications that cause the challenges that we see, and this conversation around gun rights and carry or not. It is really interesting to see how much power the NRA has in this country.
Well, sometimes when it comes to this, people look mainly at the NRA, but you have to look at the wide universe of this whole issue. It's a very large issue. I've heard some very progressive folks say, well, I believe in the right to bear arms because they feel like, listen, the day that some white supremacists get together and decide they want to come into the Black community and start massacring folks, they want to be able to be armed. At the same time, on the other side, you have you have a proliferation of arms already and people killing each other already. And what if we had a country where there were no weapons, when nobody other than law enforcement had the right to carry? You got other people that are distrustful of law enforcement and the government in particular, right? So,
and there are countries that don't allow anyone to carry. So it's not like we're talking about something that seems make believe. There are countries that are functioning that way. So it gives us pause. John had a question. He said, what type of weapon can the average person carry in New York City?
Well, I believe, I don't know this for certain. I'd have to look, but most of the time you're talking about handguns. And in terms of, because there are two different types of licenses here. There's a license for target practice and hunting versus the carry. All right. So when it comes to that hunting and targeting, of course, you're talking about rifles, long guns, etc., but not assault rifles, is my understanding. There was a recent enactment of new gun laws by Governor Hochul, I believe, about a week and a half ago regarding these some very serious restrictions on weapons based on age. From upping it from 18 to 21. And in terms of the AR-15, see, the AR-15, my understanding is that AR-15 all by itself is not automatic. What's happening is it's being illegally enhanced, which is what I believe occurred in the Buffalo shooting, but otherwise was legal to purchase. In terms of specifics, I would have to get back to my good brother John Giambalvo on that one. The particular law that's being challenged in this case here, that's going to the Supreme Court, is Section 400.00 of the penal law. In case you want to look it up and take a closer look at it.
Okay.
But yeah. This is one to watch. It's basically once again the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated versus Bruen. So Kevin P. Bruen. One to watch, and also to mention there was also an overturning of gun laws in the city of Chicago, in McDonald v. City of Chicago. That case went to the Supreme Court. So, the plaintiffs in this case are saying, hey, listen, look at Chicago. You guys overturned in Chicago, you overturned in DC. Now you gotta do New York as well because it's too restrictive.
Yeah, this is it's definitely one to watch. I am curious to see what happens. And once again, some of the themes that we've had on the show, watching and making sure you're aware of who you're electing to what positions, how it affects who sits on the bench, how people get appointed. Some of these positions are not elected, they're appointed. So it all ties back into the education that we try to share on the show, where the legal meets the cultural. So thank you for the insight on this one. We will definitely be watching. And we had a conversation in great depth around the census, around the elections. And now we have another topic looking at what happens when we don't fully participate in census numbers and when maps are reassigned and realigned. And New York State Assembly maps tossed again, but there was a decision for stay in place for the 2022 election, which we have early elections that will be happening starting tomorrow, I believe, or the 18th, opens up for the early voting portion of the elections that are happening. But what's your take on this map toss that we are now seeing?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the primary is on primary day is my understanding June 28th, right? You got the early voting, but the day, the D-Day itself, if you will, is June 28th. Now, it's also interesting that here on this screen you have Congressman Jerry Nadler and Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who apparently are facing off here because of the redistricting of the congressional lines. We talked about this a few shows ago when it happened. The New York Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state of New York, basically invalidated the New York congressional maps and the New York State Senate district maps. And a judge appointed an individual to redraw the maps, and that was what this image right here refers to. But if you recall, the New York State Assembly maps were kept intact for some reason. They were kept intact. However, there were, interestingly enough, again, two Democratic activists who challenged the New York Assembly maps as well and prevailed in front of an appellate division judge. And just let me give you once again the little rendering of once again, you got the New York State court system. Is you have the trial court at the New York State. It's called the New York State Supreme Court, but it's not the Supreme Court in the same way that it is in other states. It's the trial court. Then you go appellate division, and then you go New York State Court of Appeals. So New York State Court of Appeals being the highest court, here you had an appellate division judge who went ahead and tossed these maps, but said not for 2022. Too late. They have to be revised by 2024. So it's not gonna, the decision itself is not gonna affect this election with respect to the New York State Assembly, but it will affect 2024. Remember, once again, as I mentioned earlier, Senate maps were changed, congressional changed as well, not the Assembly for this election. It's just really all very, very interesting, hard to keep up with, of course, but interesting.
It causes a sense of confusion sometimes for folks, and then everyone gets frustrated and like, oh, I can't. But don't give up. The worst thing you could do is to make this frustrate you to the point that you don't exercise our rights, and that is the right to vote and the right to make changes. And if we participate in these opportunities like the census, then we can affect the right changes that benefit our community. So
yeah, and just for the edification of folks, listen, if you have certain doubts or issues in terms of, well, damn, who am I voting for? What's going on? You can well, first of all, you can go to each one of these legislative bodies have a website. The New York State Assembly has a website, the New York State Senate has a website, US Congress, and each one of them, they in terms of the search engine, you put in your address, boom, you hit that, and it'll tell you your district, and then you can find out, who's your incumbent, what is your exact district, and you can go from there, and that should eliminate some
of the confusion.
Some of the confusion. I know when you're registered to vote here in, when you're registered, usually you do get a very nice booklet from the League of Women Voters, I believe, and that usually has like the candidates who, were able to survive the petitioning process, were able to get properly on the ballot for consideration. It usually has a small bio as well as a nice little picture, and for you to take a look. And of course, don't rely on that pamphlet or that little booklet. You can always do your own research on each one of these people to find out more, and figure out whether this is someone that's in line with your values and your principles.
This site is interesting. Well, this is the city website, our organization, the City Scoop. So they have created a space where you can click on Congress, Senate, and Assembly and see the changes. And I just pulled up my district, just showing what the changes are and how that affects, two of the individuals who are in Assembly. And it is a lot to decipher, but just make sure that you check. Like you said, you can go to each one. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put it in the chat so that those who are on and you're curious about, where the changes might be in your particular area, we're going to share that so that you can look at it and, get
and keep in mind that my understanding is the two activists that brought that lawsuit that is now affecting those assembly lines in 2024. They were basically pursuing it on the basis of that change in the state constitution regarding making sure that the maps don't favor incumbents, and that's because, listen, at the end of the day, unfortunately, that's part of what happens with respect to that's an unfortunate feature of redistricting. At the same time, though, we also we can't disregard the fact that those who originally were fighting these lines were fighting more so not on trying to empower anyone, but to make sure to keep a hold on old power. The people who are, used to running things even before our current state government became this diverse. There's no question that the new leadership in the chambers there's no one can argue that they've ever seen this many women in the legislature, this many legislators of color. You've never seen this level of diversity before. So those quote unquote activists who are, fighting to make sure that isn't, these lines don't favor incumbents need to, think about the effects of many of their efforts and whether that's really going to result in the change that they're seeking.
Exactly. If it's one that's favorable. Well, we will see how this pans out. We have until 2024, at least here in New York. But no matter where you're viewing from, in the assembly, make sure that you're paying attention wherever you live, because we have viewers from all over the country. Don't let this just pass you by. Be actively engaged in understanding how lines are drawn, because that's where your representation comes from. That's where you access your resources. So you have to stay connected with getting that information. And shout out to Kevin, who is watching us from Kingston, New York. He said where the original documents in the Sojourner Truth Matter came to the original courthouse for the first time in 200 years. So a little bit of cultural there. So thank you, Kevin, for sharing that, and safe travels while you're up there in Kingston. Hopefully the weather is as beautiful upstate as it is downstate. So before we go to the next story, did you want to share anything else on this redistricting and maps?
No. That's okay. I think I'm done with that.
All right. Well, we have one more story for today. We're on summer hours for the show. So we're going to wrap up with an interesting conversation about Happy the elephant is not a person, a court rules.
Yeah.
Now, we might chuckle at this, but there's some context here of why, where the legal meets the cultural, this particular story has some additional relevance.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this was a case that was brought by, animal rights activists. Happy is an elephant in the Bronx Zoo. I don't know if anyone I'm pretty sure some members of our audience have been to the Bronx Zoo. I enjoy the Bronx Zoo. I went before I had kids. I went several times after. In fact, we had a birthday party for my son at the Bronx Zoo. It was wonderful when he was much smaller than he is now, and not as tall. but Happy is at the Bronx Zoo, and a group of people human beings said, hey, listen, Happy deserves rights. He shouldn't, be jailed, imprisoned in this zoo against his wishes, and is deserving of status of on the same level as a person. And they had an expert say that elephants, along with dolphins, and I believe chimpanzees, have this ability to be self-aware, like be able to look at their image in a mirror and realize that that is a reflection of them, versus other quote unquote lower intellectually order mammals and animals. And so they kind of used that to support their argument that Happy is deserving of rights, and Happy is not happy sitting in the zoo with no rights. Okay. And Court of Appeals said, no, not a person, not deserving of these rights. Why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about this? Probably people are wondering. I will tell you a story. Many years ago, when I was an undergrad at the University of Binghamton, I was active in the Black Student Union. And if I recall, we had a Black Solidarity Day celebration, and we would have annually in the student union, and we would set up tables, informational, different stuff going on. And so we were approached one year by an animal rights organization, and they asked us, hey, can we be part of this? We'd like to set up a table. We said, sure, no problem. We don't see any problem with that. No, it's cool. When we go and look at the setup at their table, they had an image of an animal, and they had, I think, behind some bars or something like that. And then they had an image of an enslaved African.
Mm.
And they were making basically this equivalency in terms of the treatment of animals, treatment of Africans during slavery. And most of us were in absolute shock, to say the least, because we felt it was offensive. We were like, how dare you compare our plight to that of,
Mm.
animals in captivity? I mean, we are already, treated in a way where we're, less than human, and to then make that sort of equivalency, we felt offended, and it became a big thing. And I don't remember exactly what happened because this was so many years ago. I hate to
Right.
age. It's been quite some time since I was an undergraduate, but I believe
Just a few years ago.
but I believe we asked them to put down the sign and even leave, and so this continues to rear its ugly head, because when I read this story, I started reading about this continuous, and I also read a little bit about the case and some of the arguments and the comparisons, and it was, I'm amazed at that argument, that those equivalencies have not ceased in terms of the plight of people of color during slavery, and animals, and not to say that I'm against cruelty to animals, no doubt, even though I am not a vegetarian, okay, but I don't believe in the gratuitous cruelty to animals. So that's why I felt it was important for us to bring up this story. It looks like kind of a fun factoid kind of story, but I want folks to realize that there is something behind this to be looked at and be cognizant and aware of, where some of these arguments can take us.
Exactly. And it's where the legal meets the culture. Once again, just thank you for sharing that, because some people might not be aware that is still, while it was a thing, it's still a thing in some places, and it's bringing up memories for those who are tracking and watching this conversation, and why we just need to be aware and need to be educated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is quite an interesting story. I started reading some of the article myself. I said, oh, isn't this wow? Because then there's the whole other argument that sometimes we can treat animals better than we treat people of color in the country. So we won't get into all of that today. But truly, I enjoy the discourse that we can have here, because having you and Mr. Russell as two legal experts, it allows us to think about stories in a different way, headlines in a different way, where our rights are, what affects us, and how we can be, just vigilant in learning and never thinking that we know it all or know enough, that it's a constant opportunity for us to be aware of what's happening in the cities and states and countries that we live in. I know we focus mainly on the United States here, but this is on the internet, so anyone from anywhere can watch and learn.
Now I did. There was a topic that I'm not sure if I wasn't on last week. I was on location, as you referred to earlier. I'm not sure if we were able to talk about the recall of the San Francisco district attorney. Were we, Dr. Graham?
I do think we were. Let me see. No, I don't think we had a chance to share that yet.
Yeah, District Attorney Boudin in San Francisco, progressive, tried to look at alternatives to incarceration, behavior of the police, all those things, very progressive DA, got recalled. So he got bounced out of office before the end of his term. And the reason why this is important for us, even though it occurred out there on the West Coast, is you have a lot of people using that to shine a light on Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and saying, oh, we have another progressive here who needs to be recalled. Now, you don't have recall for his office here in New York, but they're certainly asking, say, Governor Hochul to try to make moves towards removal. And you know, I want to mention that on this show because, you know, the election of Alvin Bragg as Manhattan DA was historic, and we need to make sure we support him. We need to make sure that we you know, and I know that there are some activists in our community who are saying, oh, he's not doing enough about this and he's not doing enough about that, you know, but you know, I caution them to think about having someone, whether they want somebody in office who they can actually speak to about their issues versus being ignored completely, okay, and not even getting a seat at the table. And you know, I found Alvin Bragg to be extremely open and accessible. And and whether you disagree with some of his policies or not, I definitely do not believe that he should be, you know, be in any way removed from office. He should get he should have the ability to prove himself in that office and do what he needs to do. And if you know, I think he's been in office for a year now. If 3 years from now, whatever, when the next election come up, if folks decide they don't want him to continue, then let it be then. But none of this talk about trying to end his term prematurely. You know, I'm one who, you know, is definitely advocating against that. Yeah, and as you have up, Chesa Boudin, yeah, you know, they're kind of using this like, oh, this is a lesson to liberal prosecutors. They're, you know, in that same conversation has been the DA in Philly as well. You know, these DAs being elected was part of a movement to get a very powerful office into the hands of people who really, really understand people and are trying to come up with some humanistic, policies that really get to the heart of the problem and not just, looking to lock up poor people and people of color en masse without addressing what's at the heart of most crime in the country and in certain communities. So, right. This is definitely one to watch in terms of an overall national phenomenon, if you will. Listen, people aren't talking about, Eric Gonzalez in Brooklyn, but, he has several, progressive policies. He hasn't come up under the same fire as Alvin has, of course, but nonetheless, we're kind of talking about, the same tracks, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Well, I am concerned with the trends that we're seeing, but we definitely have to pay attention and to let our voices be known. And you made great points there on, the opportunity that District Attorney Alvin Bragg has and us being supportive of giving him a chance to really have a successful term in office. So thank you for sharing that and the insight on all our stories today. Always interesting and enlightening, as you say. And we appreciate your time and everyone else tuning in. If you're catching live or watching the replay, we say thank you. And we will be back again with another show. We might be taking a little summer break coming up for a couple of weeks, but we thank you for tuning in and being a part of the Speaking Legally family. Stay safe, be well. I know the weather's great and vacation is happening, but COVID is still moving around in its various variations.
Oh my God. How about this monkeypox stuff?
Oh, jeez. When I heard about the monkeypox, I'm like, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to give it air. Like, we don't need anything else to be challenged with. So just be careful. That's just the bottom line. We don't know what's flying in the air. And a lot of this is airborne. So wear a mask, be careful. Some people are like, no, I'm tired of wearing masks. Well, you make choices and, govern yourself accordingly. What can we say?
I was on the subway just now and you don't have people wearing the mask like they used to. I mean, yeah, you always had people who were riding without masks, but usually as the majority of people, now it's the opposite,
Yeah, same on the planes. As I've been traveling, folks are opting out of keeping the mask on, but a lot of the employees, they're keeping their mask on. So that tells you something, right? If they're still keeping it on because they know what's going in and out, you don't know what's passing you. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. We thank you for being here. Thank you, John. Thank you, Kevin, and everyone else who was stopping in today. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Take care, everyone.
Take care.